The rest of this video is only for those of you who really want to know the truth. If you're going to be real critical and if you're scared out of your brain right now and you think maybe I'm of the devil, then I suggest you don't watch the rest of this video. Because I'm telling you, if you're ready for this, nothing will stop you in what you endeavor to do. But if you're not ready for this, then just turn this off right now. Because this might stumble you. But this is the truth. And for those of you who are going to go ahead and keep tuned in, thank you. Because you're the people that I'm talking to. These other people, it's not their time. They're not ready yet. I very much feel sad when someone gets to this point and they turn it off and revert back to their, confusion and no, that's of the devil, and they listen to that. Yeah, that saddens me because I know that they're just... Hello, friends. This is David Vos. And, buddy, have we got some information for you today. I turn this thing on and stand out here on my property, this beautiful backdrop, and we're going to sit here and we're going to start digging into some information that, oh man, I mean, every time we talk, we get a little deeper. Dispel more lies. Friends, I don't know what to say to you at the opening of this video, because I want you to be able to watch this video. I would like for a lot of people to watch this video, because there's information that is truthful in this video, that is correct, that is accurate, hardcore truth that you have never heard in your entire life. And I think there's only a handful of people in the world that possibly know this information. And this information is going to put you on a road that you've never dreamed on, you've never thought about. I mean, it's like you thought you could live in the desert, right? But you get to live on the beach, man. You get to live on the mountains with a view. You see, this is something you never dreamed you could have. Truth. I know you went to the church down the street, you sat in a little pew, and, well, they taught you some stuff. Wasn't verified. It was ancient tradition that you knew from the get-go wasn't true. Because, my goodness, this guy that was up on the stage talking to you was your neighbor. You know he didn't know. He didn't do any studying. He didn't have any revelation from God. He was giving you information handed down from who? What, his bishop? And where did they get it from? Well, they split off from the First Baptist, Second Presbyterian. They veered off 1,000 years ago from the Anabaptist. And now look, the Catholic Church, we've already determined, was not just an apostasy. I mean, that's selling it short. Okay? Because an apostasy would mean that you had this truth and you just sort of fell from the holy apostolic faith. Right? Okay, if there was a holy apostolic faith handed down, it was not through the traditional channels that we know of in the Catholic Church. But in the beginning, it was just the esoteric believers in the communal orders that knew, they knew who they were. They had their scriptures. We've dug up many of them. We've talked about many of them. And then there was the Catholic Church that didn't just say, oh, we have the holy canon that's only accepted because all the wise ones say this is the only one that's true. That's not how it happened. What happened was that the Holy Catholic faith didn't want you to have the scriptures. They were trying to make it up. They were trying to hide things. They burned the library in Alexandria. They weren't trying to preserve or tell you which ones of the books were right or somehow explain everything to you so that you could have knowledge and you could determine what was the truth, right? No. This was a concerted effort to destroy, to murder, to plunder, to kill the witches and the wizards. So, well, yeah, Dave, you're not supposed to follow after the wizards. Well, you know what a wizard is? It's a wise one. Why would you think that in the days of the early apostles that they were all being martyred on crosses, and then all of a sudden 50 years later it's the apostles murdering the others? You know, the apostles never went around murdering people. Oh, you're a wizard, oh, we got to murder you. They were the ones being murdered, and the wizards, the wise ones, were the ones being murdered throughout the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages, even on into the Age of Enlightenment, because they were the ones with the wisdom. And it was the occult. It was that which was hidden. By who? Well, the Apostle Paul says he spoke words that were unlawful for man to speak because, you see, Jesus says you don't give your pearl before swine because they'll turn around and rend you. You can't just go around telling people this stuff because, you see, the Catholic Church will murder you. And they did. So we've covered all this. We know this is true. But what I'm now about to tell you is going to curl your hair. Might even curl my hair, okay? But I've had some time to process this, and so my hair is just about done curling, all right? But I'm telling you, I'm amazed every moment and every day. Every time I think about things that I want to tell people about what has happened, and realizing how shocking it's going to be to you guys, and how difficult it's going to be for me to really just lay it on you, and you're going to be able to go, oh, okay, well, we're the wizards now. Sure, let's go have a seance, right? And you're like, oh my goodness, David, you blasphemer. You see, how am I going to tell you these things? It's going to take time, line upon line, word upon word. We're going to have to really dig deep and be honest. Remember, we did that video just the other day where it says the first thing we're going to have to do is be honest and say, we don't know the truth. We're searching, okay? You got to give up your preconceived ideas. But one thing you know for sure, the Catholic Church, the Holy Catholic Church, they don't know what they're talking about, right? They don't know. It's just a bunch of ceremonies and hums and ha's. And the same thing is happened now with every religion on the face of the earth. I guarantee that those who are in authority and power have wiped out from the face of the earth this ancient knowledge. And I'll tell you how they did it. They did it in various ways. Number one, they burned books. They destroyed information. They killed people. They disbanded organizations. They put propaganda out. And one of the lies and pieces of propaganda is that somehow or another, the people that they murdered, they had to murder them because they were all wicked. Never mind that good people don't go around murdering people. And that truth would always win anyway. What is the truth got to go out and murder the darkness for? Right? What is the good people got to go around building crosses with fire and, and wearing little hats and, like little black capes? Or what's this black robe thing these bishops are wearing? Come on. Get some white robes. At least, act like you're trying to tell us something true. But they're right in your face saying, we're wearing black, man. We're cloaking this thing. Little white collar here. We're going to cloak the truth. See, only the Pope gets to wear white. He knows what's really going on, but that man's an evil dude. I guarantee there's a place right outside of the Vatican where the cardinals and some very, very important people from the Knights of Malta, Jesuit priests, who know what's going on and know what they've done to you. They're out having orgies and sacrificing babies. I guarantee it. And we're just all going around just saying, well, that's all right. We don't know what we're going to do, but hey, let's go back down to our little church and sit in the pew and get our daily dose of propaganda. Now, don't you be looking into that occult stuff. Don't be looking into the hidden wisdom. Even though, of course, we've dug up the Nag Hammadi library. You say, well, yeah, the Holy Scriptures are right here. There's 66 books. Okay, but the Nag Hammadi library has Gospels, like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Truth. These Gospels have the pure sayings of Jesus Christ. and they'll blow your mind. And they're the scriptures and the verses that the Catholic Church wouldn't let you have. So these poor persons that were persecuted and died, these witches, died clutching these manuscripts, right? Somehow or another, they put them into these vases, stuck them in a cave. 1945, some young man out there playing with his dog or whatever, and he stumbles across this cave with all these scrolls. Wow. Divine intervention has given us a little bit of what we didn't know about Jesus. But I'm going to tell you something else that you don't know about Jesus. And look, I pray that those of you who are searching will take this very, very prayerfully yourselves. And listen very carefully, because this will change your life. If those Gospels, Thomas, Philip, Truth, that have teachings of reincarnation, karma, very esoteric wisdom, Gnostic teachings, if they are sayings of Jesus that were burned or destroyed, or somehow they had to go underground, why do you think they had to do that? Because somebody was trying to get rid of him. Who was trying to get rid of Jesus? It wasn't the good guys. Who was trying to get rid of the apostles? It wasn't the good guys. Didn't the apostles say, after our departure, wolves shall come in and they'll do whatever they want with the flock and scatter the flock and so forth? Didn't it happen? The great apostasy? So you're going to go to the apostates to try and somehow measure your faith and what you believe? Well, the apostates say I'm not right. So, I know they're apostates, so I'm not going to believe them. But at the same time, they're saying don't get involved in this thing. So I better not get involved in that thing because, well, now, maybe that one thing that they don't want you to get involved in, the ones they murdered and burned their books, maybe that's where you start searching, okay? Because I want to tell you something. The MAGI came down, 3 astrologers. They came down to worship Christ. They were from the East. But the Sanhedrin, the scribes and Pharisees, Jesus condemned. Hypocrites! Your father is the devil. He's a liar. He's a slanderer. From the beginning, a murderer. He does not abide in the truth. And you do not abide in the truth. It says in your law, but I tell you, don't. No. Nada. Well, you didn't keep the Sabbath, Jesus, or your disciples are picking grain on the Sabbath. Jesus says, my Father keeps working until now, and I keep working. I don't know who your Father is, but your Father's from beneath. My Father's from above. Your God is the God of this world, and he's blinding the minds of the unbelievers. We have to realize that if all that's true, what I've been telling you, then we need to find out what is the truth. More than just, okay, that's not the truth, right? So what is the truth? Oh, this is beautiful. Once you find out the truth, man, oh man, whoo, it's going to be so good if we could just get this truth out to everybody and they could just awake and find out, oh my goodness, wow, this is amazing. Let me tell you something. Those 3 Magi were magicians. Oh, don't get involved in that, brother, folks. Oh, them magicians and sorcerers and wizards. Okay. Well, first of all, you've heard of the book of Tobit. I've explained this to you guys before. You ever heard of the book of Tobit? Yeah, it was in the Bible until 1611, and they took it out. The Protestants didn't like it, so they threw it out. Now, the reason they didn't like it is because it was a book of magic. Bet you didn't know that. Well, that's probably because they didn't, reveal that to you. And, it's pretty, since they kind of hid all this information and skewed it and told you that God, who's a liar, doesn't want you to consult other gods and use magic and divination, but only to divine from his priests, because his priests used divination. Moses was a diviner. He was a sorcerer. He threw down his serpent, and the Pharaoh threw down his serpents. You got the battling sorcerers, right? And Moses' serpent ate his serpent. So these 2 great sorcerers, these magicians, were battling. And Jehovah said, I am your God, and I don't want you to bow down to these other gods, and if you do, I will murder you. And I want you to murder every other nation on the face of the earth that doesn't bow down to me. Now remember, don't go in the land of Edom, because they got another god, or don't go over here to the Moabites, or they got their own gods. And then he gets angry with them, and he sells them into the hand, or into the debt of some other god. Deuteronomy 32:8 talks about how the Most High God divided up the nations into 70, and Israel's lot came to be for Jehovah. So he became the God of the Israelites. But the other nations had their gods. There were 70 gods, and there are 70 nations. Jehovah was a jealous God. He said, I don't want you worshiping those other gods. Jesus came along and said, look, remember what the serpent told you? That you become like God, knowing good and evil, and live forever? He says, well, that's what I'm going to come here to explain to you, is that, yeah, you're going to live forever. I promise you. And ye are gods, and this scripture cannot be broken. Your God's a liar. Okay, that's what I come to tell you. I came to reveal the Father to you. So what was Jesus? I mean, what was this? What did he want to tell us? Well, he wanted to reveal love and truth, and free us from this law and from that God who was the accuser of the brethren. But what did he believe? Who were these wizards? As we've talked about, this goes back before Christianity as we understand it. I mean, we have this notion that Jesus came along and believed that that God of the Jews was his father, believed in all their laws, and he came to die to take our punishment for the law of his father. So his father says, look, I'm going to make a law. Nobody can keep it. I'm going to condemn the whole world. Then I'm going to send my favorite son, my only begotten. He's perfect, and he's pure, and he's true, and he's going to come down there, and he's going to die on a cross. And somehow that's going to pay for all these other people's sins. Then you're going to believe in Jesus. So yes, I believe. And if you just confess with your mouth and do everything we say, you're under most of the laws, the ones that we say. The other ones, no, right? We're under slavery until, modern times, Constitution reveals that that's wrong. So, we just change doctrines or whatever, okay, now we don't believe in slavery, except we're under the table, right? We don't believe in immorality, and if you do it, you got to pay penance. But the priests, they don't even get in trouble if they're pedophiles and they're harming children in the basement, see? Because this is not the true religion. This is a fakery. So what was Jesus doing? The Essenes were a group of individuals that they had, they were living in the desert, and they were an esoteric group. We've dug up the Dead Sea Scrolls. We found out a lot about the Essenes. They weren't like the scribes and the Pharisees. They didn't go by the law. Now here's why that is. They were led by John the Baptist, who was in the tradition of Elijah. Who was Elijah? Because remember, it says that John the Baptist came wearing this camel skin robe. How is that significant? It's significant because that's the same robe that Elijah wore. Because John the Baptist was Elijah reincarnated according to Jesus. And he had his mantle, see, his garment. And that represented the fact that he would receive that anointing and that authority and teachings of his predecessor. Because if you go back into the Old Testament, you find out that Elijah left the earth in a fiery chariot. But Elisha, which is his pupil, his student, said, Lord, if you go, I need double the power that you had. I want twice the anointing. And Elijah says, well, that's a lot to ask. But if you see me going, then you can have that. So he saw him going up in the fiery chariot, and his mantle came down out of the sky and floated down, and he grabbed it and put it on, and he became the great magician. Magician, I say, because of the reasons that we're going to present. So Elijah then must have been a Jew, from Jerusalem, right? He must have worshipped in the temple and sacrificed animals to this God Yahweh. No, because you see, there were two nations, the nation of Israel, which had 10 tribes, and the nation of Judea, which had 2 tribes, and part of another tribe, the Levites. But remember, before King David, Israel weren't really worshiping Jehovah at all. None of them really did. If you read the history, it says they worshiped Baal, and they worshiped Molech, and they worshiped all different kinds of gods, and they had different religions, Dagon, and so forth. They had goddesses. Their Yahweh had an Asherah. Astarte was the wife of Jehovah for a while. They had different beliefs. Well, so wait a minute now, Dave. The Old Testament says that they just worshiped Jehovah, and he was angry with them if they ever did anything. That was apostasy. Well, yeah, like we said, that God Jehovah, he was pretty jealous, and he didn't want them worshiping other gods. But of course, Jerusalem did worship other gods all the time. In fact, Solomon, the great wisest man of all the earth, the great King Solomon, he married many wives, and many of them had different beliefs and religions. And one of them was very beautiful, and she says, I want you to, make a sacrifice to my gods. And Solomon says, okay. He did it. He had people from the Phoenicians working on his temple, and he put inside of his temple many things from this esoteric wisdom. And all of these children from his 1,000 wives became lineal priesthoods from the line of David that went into all the earth by divine inspiration. But of course, Jehovah didn't like it. Jehovah was angry with him because Jehovah was a jealous God. But Solomon, he worshipped many gods. Ammon. Ammon is an Egyptian god. Sol is the name of the sun. In Egypt, they called it Amun-Ra. And so the temple of Solomon is a temple that we find today that's still there down in Luxor, Egypt. And they'll never find that temple up there in Israel. But who then did Elijah worship, and where did he worship? Well, the Bible tells you he worshiped at Bethel. Bethel was a sacred temple, and they worshiped there, and there was a rock and a tree. Deborah, the mother of Israel, before used to sit down under this tree and teach her disciples. And she wasn't, first of all, she wasn't of the lineage of Aaron. She wasn't a Levite. She was she had a priesthood of a different order. The priesthood of this different order was headquartered in the northern part, not in the Judean capital of Jerusalem, but in another city up in Ephraim, up in the 10 tribes. And it was close to their capital city. But there was a little city called Nob, which is where their priests lived. And this was about 1.5 miles from this temple at Bethel. And the Bible tells you that Elijah lived at Bethel, and there were the priests there, and he started a school, the school of the prophets. What does that mean? A school isn't like today, a little classroom with kids going in, We get the word school from the ancient schools. The schools in the ancient times were schools like with Aristotle and his pupils, right? This is why we have the fact that Jesus had disciples, because it was a school, and they were the master. Today, people, Judeans, Israelites today, they have rabbis or teachers and students, but they still don't know where all this has come because tradition has gotten lost. We don't know what's going on. So Elijah was a priest, but not what you would think. Okay, he went off from Jerusalem and went up there to Bethel, and that's where he worshipped, and he started the school of the prophets. So all the prophets after that weren't even Jews. They weren't after the order of the Aaronic priesthood. That's why prophets aren't necessarily Aaronic priests. Some of them could have been. Ezekiel was of the Aaronic line. Buzi, his father was Buzi from Aaron. But some of the Levitical priests also lived because they didn't have a tribe, so they were just scattered throughout Israel. Some of the priests were up in the northern part. So there was these two places that men worshipped, at Bethel and at Jerusalem. The prophets came from Bethel, and the judges, and Deborah, the mother of Israel, and Samuel, and Samson, and King David. Remember, it says in the book of Psalms that King David received the priesthood of Melchizedek. And if you read the story of how that happened, he didn't get that priesthood from the Aaronic priesthood. Melchizedek priesthood is a higher priesthood. How did he get it? Well, it tells you in the Bible that he went to Nob, to a priest, the city of Nob, which is 2 miles from Bethel. They were the priests at Bethel. He received an ephod from that priesthood, not from the priesthood of Jerusalem and the Aaronites and the Levites that were there. But he went to Bethel. That's where David got his priesthood. And he was anointed with oil, and he became a high priest. And that's why the New Testament says that David, who, though he was not a priest of the order of Aaron or Levi, and yet he was able to go into the temple and eat the showbread. It was not lawful for an ordinary person to do, because he had a priesthood that was higher. If you have this Melchizedek priesthood, it's much higher than any other priesthood. Now, what was that? Well, Melchizedek met Abraham 430 years before the law. So the Apostle Paul says that the law that came into being after El Elyon, the God Most High, not Jehovah, the God Most High, came down and with his emissary Melchizedek and blessed Abraham and said, "In thee shall all the nations be blessed." That's my promise, period. There's no law. I don't want any sacrifices. Just here's some bread and some wine. The Holy Eucharist, the communion. This was the sacred rites. And as we've discussed in other videos, this wine, and Jews today, rabbis and individuals will admit that that ancient wine that they drank was spiked with cannabis. And the little cakes they ate wasn't just plain old bread. Okay, it was filled with cannabis. And the anointing oil was 9 pounds of cannabis and 1.5 gallons of olive oil and some myrrh and cinnamon for various reasons, because they wanted it to smell good when they rubbed it all over you. You were anointed, and like Saul and David, when they got anointed, they started acting in an ecstatic manner. That's what it means that they prophesied. They began to act and dance and rip their clothes off and act crazy, like the apostles. The day of Pentecost, they says they thought they were drunk. But he said, no, it's the 3rd hour of the day. They're not drunk as you suppose. See, but their pineal gland and the pituitary gland is excited. They've opened up their third eye. They've got a flame of fire upon their head that's split in twain. Their two energies have been lit. And Christ, that inner spiritual high priest that's within you, that's that inner spiritual man that's within you, that powerful man within you that's got authority and that sits at the right hand of power, that's in you. He's in there trimming the wicks and keeping it burning. But what did you do? You snuffed him out because you took your mind off of the Christ. See, he put his hand out and you took your mind off of Christ and you start looking at the world. Start using your 5 senses. You've got to crucify those 5 kings like Joshua did. He put them in a cave and rolled the stone over it. Then he pulled them out of the cave and crucified them all. 5 kings, 5 senses. Get rid of it. Only follow the Spirit. We follow not the flesh, but we follow after the Spirit. And Christ in you is the hope of glory. So, Elijah then didn't worship at Jerusalem. And when the 10 tribes were taken into captivity in 722 by Sargon II, and they had been under siege for 3 years, because initially Shalmaneser V had come in there and attacked and surrounded them. 3 years later, Sargon II takes him into captivity. Even those individuals down there in Samaria, the whole nation now was in captivity. The priesthood that went with them wasn't the Jewish priesthood. It wasn't the religion of Jerusalem that went into all the nations, that became Buddhism and Shintoism that we've talked about, because the Israelites became the Scythians, the Sake, the sons of Isaac, and they were also known as the Sumeri, which is the Sumerians, and they end up becoming the tribe that went down into India, the Punjab, and they took over India. They became the Buddhists because, you see, Buddha was a very high priestly lineal descent from these elite individuals that ruled over his people. He was of the Sake tribe, or the Israelites. And so this religion of Buddhism, what was it? Well, I'm going to tell you what it was. It was the magician religion, the MAGI. See, that ancient religion came from... Sorry, battery ran out. So, picking up where we left off, that ancient religion that was in that entire area, because you see the Scythians went up into the area of the northern India and just below the Caspian Sea. They became the Sake, or as we understand them today to be the Scythians. They went Europe, and they went to India, they went to Japan. We have shown that the Japanese, the Shinto religion, is the religion of Israel. They have a Mount Moriah in Japan, and they have a temple, and they have the Ark of the Covenant, and they hold the Ark of the Covenant with 2 poles. They have all of the holidays. They have Hebrew letters in the Japanese language. It's made of Hebrew letters, and on and on and on. It's the same. They have some of the same ceremonies, most of the same ceremonies and celebrations, slightly over time, that we're using the Japanese language, which has become altered over time, but it's the same teachings. Buddhism and Zoroastrianism. So Daniel then goes to Babylon and becomes the head of the Magi. Now, how do you suppose he did that? He said, wait a minute now, I'm Jewish, right? I worship in Jerusalem. And you took me into captivity, now you want me to be head of the Magi and practice magic. Okay, no problem, sure. And his God liked that, right? Guess what? It wasn't Jehovah, his God. All the way through, the book of Daniel says the Most High, the Most High, the Most High. Daniel's God was the Most High God, El Elyon. And yes, he was pleased with Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who were governors of satraps, which were the entire known world was all split up into satraps. And these individuals from this lineage of the Judah went up there and became head of the Magi and governors of satraps. And we found out in other videos, we've talked about how even Nebuchadnezzar was a descendant of King David. And people in Ulster and Ireland and England and the British throne and Russia and all around the world and Japan, and Buddha was a descendant of King David. And so, this other religion, see, there's these 2 religions. There's this God of this world who's blinding the minds of the unbelievers. But our Father didn't leave us just with only this one false idea. See, our Father in heaven has protected the truth all these years. Just for a short period of time, when the Catholics came up, the Bible says it would happen. Right? The devil would come out of the abyss and deceive the entire world. Well, that happened during the Dark Ages under the Catholic Church. That's Christianity, as you know it. That's the darkness. What did they do? They destroyed these other teachings. Because remember, Israel went into all the earth like seed to plant the world and to give the world what? What were they pushing the peoples to the ends of the earth for? Planted as seed in all the earth. And where it was said, you're not my people, because that God abandoned them and divorced them, our Father in heaven comes along and redeems them. And says, where it was said, you are not my people, there shall be the sons of the living God. Not the God of Yahweh, but the living God. Because he doesn't abandon anyone. He loves us. And he prepared for all nations. Remember, it was that Judean religion that rejected the Messiah, that could not believe, that could not accept and receive. But you see, that's why our Father in heaven said, this is a great mystery, because I have scattered them on all the earth, and I'm going to save all the earth. It's a promise I made to Abraham, and in Abraham's seed all the world should be blessed. And he is the father of many nations, many, many, many nations, 70 in fact, all of the nations. And as Revelation chapter 7 says, every nation, tribe, and tongue, and people, and language, a great multitude, which no man could number. That was the promise given to Abraham, and it was also the promise given to Jacob. And 70 souls came out of Jacob's loins and went down into Egypt. And that same promise of a multitude of nations and all of these blessings was given to Jacob's son Joseph, the one who was born at the very end, and he was adopted as the 13th tribe. And so the United States has 13 stripes and 13 stars and 13 arrows and all of this 13 because we are the blessing nation, okay, of all nations, tribes, and tongues, born out of season. Finally, the child that's born, remember, there's always two kids born and they're all supposed to rule. We don't know which one's going to rule. And the one you think is going to rule doesn't get to rule because our Father in heaven has the right, the last choice. And so he chooses Joseph, who marries Asenath, the daughter of Shechem, a Canaanite. And this son, this child, who is a cake not turned, burned on one side and white on the other, is in all the earth, having a coat of many colors, was Joseph had a coat of many colors. This is the child that our Father has chosen, our Father in heaven has chosen. And all of these religions that you've told are evil and wrong and sorcery and wizardry and MAGI, they're the ones who came and worshiped and bowed down to Jesus and said, this is the Lord, this is the Christ. And it's these Judeans that you've been following their God that Jesus said was a liar. They're the ones who rejected him. Well, I'm telling you, friends, that the stone that the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. And let me tell you about another book. We talked about the Nag Hammadi Library. Let me tell you about a book that you probably haven't read, and I encourage all of you to go out and get it. I'm going to give you a couple of books that you should read. But only the rest of this video is only for those of you who really want to know the truth. If you're going to be real critical and if you're scared out of your brain right now and you think maybe I'm of the devil, then I suggest you don't watch the rest of this video. Because I'm telling you, if you're ready for this, nothing will stop you in what you endeavor to do. But if you're not ready for this, then just turn this off right now. Because this might stumble you. But this is the truth. And for those of you who are going to go ahead and keep tuned in, thank you. Because you're the people that I'm talking to. These other people, it's not their time. They're not ready yet. I very much feel sad when someone gets to this point and they turn it off and revert back to their, confusion and no, that's of the devil, and they listen to that. Yeah, that saddens me because I know that they're just, curtailing their own progression and their own happiness because they're choosing to follow after something that they know beyond a doubt is wrong, but what they don't know, they're choosing to ignore. You got to have an open mind. You got to keep your eyes on the prize, and you got to keep searching. If you're not searching, see, the only way you can search is if you know you ain't got the truth. And so, if you don't know what's behind that door, then don't say, oh, I ain't going behind that door. They told me that's a bad door. No, if you're searching and you can't quite find too many doors and, you found a map that says this is it, open the door and take a look. And don't just open it and then take off running. Look at it because, you see, you've been lied to. You've been conditioned and programmed. Okay, so let me show you another book. Have you ever heard the story? Well, the New Testament has got to be the truth because it's so old. We've got these ancient manuscripts that are written in like 60, 70, 80, 100 AD. It's only 30 or 40 years after Christ, right? So it's like, it's got to be true, right? Eyewitness accounts. Okay, then we dug up the Nag Hammadi Library and we find out that the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, proclaiming to be the actual words of Jesus, also from 50, 60 AD, perhaps at least as old or older, most likely slightly older, from a more pure tradition of what Jesus said. Because if you look at the book of Luke, Luke just says, oh, I've endeavored to find out these things, and he wrote it, and he put his own commentary in there. The book of Thomas and Truth is just the words of Jesus, the sayings of Jesus. And there's some sayings there a lot of sayings that aren't in the New Testament as we know it. And it's very important that you find out that there was a group of people. Let's say that that's not even the truth. Let's say that's a bunch of apostates, right? Okay. Well, these group of people, these Gnostics who wrote the Nag Hammadi library were all murdered by the other group. Maybe you should look into what they were murdered for. Maybe they weren't apostates. Maybe they were being murdered because the devil, as he always wants to do, when he killed Jesus and the apostles, maybe 50 years later, he was still killing the Christians. And that's probably why the apostasy happened. And then we got the Catholic Church, because all these poor Gnostics were murdered. And their books were burned and banned and hid up in the caves. All right, now, there's another book that's even older. Several books. They're even older than the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, older than the Nag Hammadi library. And Jesus basically either quotes from them or does everything that those scriptures say. In other words, there's a lot of things that Jesus does, and we have no idea why he's doing them. He's out in the desert, and he has this confrontation with Satan. He fasts for 40 days. Why? What's this 40 days thing? Christians just say, oh, no, that's just something symbolic. You know, everybody fasts for 40 days, right? Well, there's a reason. The wizards, the shamans, they had a certain initiatory process that took 40 days of fasting. And you ever heard of the story of the genie, right? Aladdin's lamp and the genie, and you get 3 wishes. That's based on this ancient Zoroastrian religion, the MAGI, the religion of the MAGI. The religion of the MAGI is the religion that bowed down and recognized Christ and the birth of Jesus. When Jesus fasted for 40 days, he was doing a particular ceremony or ritual magic. We talked about the book of Tobit. In that book, which is a book of magic, and Raphael is the holy angel of healing that's talked about in that book. Well, they're told in that book, in order to heal and to cast out demons, you need to go catch a fish, and you open up the fish, and you take his gizzard and his kidneys, and you burn them in the fire. And then you take the gall, and you mix it and make a tea, and you drink that, and then you won't have any more spirits. And so you see, what is that? Well, that's a magical ritual for exorcism. Okay? And it was in our Bibles. Well, they had to take that out because, oh boy, we don't want any magician stuff in there. Well, these are the types of ritual magic that individuals, whoever wrote these books, these Gnostics, these wizards that existed all the way down even before Christ, this is the kind of thing they did. They had books. And their teachings rivaled any other organization or group that's ever lived on the earth. In fact, all of the ancient schools, or schools of the prophets and the mystery schools, all of them did these same things. They're all the same. Zoroastrianism, Mithraism, Buddhism, it's all the same. That's why you see Buddha sitting in a position with his legs crossed. And you think, oh, well, he must have just sat there forever. No, they sit there for 40 days. And the reason why is because it was they were waiting for their genie, or that's that word in the Arabic, but we call it spirit. They were waiting for their angel that they would be able to see. This whole part of this next part is going to be I'm going to have to do another video. It's going to be a series. And we're going to get into what the world is that's around us. Because, you see, this is one of the reasons they've hidden this from you. You have power. You can command the angels. You can have any wish. You know, Aladdin and the genie, and that's a movie. It's out right now. You get 3 wishes, right? Well, you didn't get 3 wishes. You actually got any wish you want. You could have any wish. You could have anything you wanted. But you had to have dominion over these genies, over these jinns. Well, over the spirits. They weren't good. They were demons. So, oh, Dave, oh, you're talking about conjuring up a demon. I don't want nothing to do with that. Well, it's because we've never been taught spirituality. We've never been taught magic. We don't know what it is. Well, if it's got anything to do with demons, Dave, well, I don't want anything to do with it. Problem is that the demons are already in you. You've got to get dominion over them, buddy. That's why we're in this darkness. That's why you're drunk and laying on the floor and got no wealth and you're not prospering and you're depressed because you got demons. Jesus said, look, go ye therefore, this was a commandment of Jesus, go therefore and cast out demons, and what you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Well, what does that mean? Where do you get that? You just make that up? No, that's something that goes back to this ancient magic practicing priest that we were talking about, and now I'm going to reveal a manuscript where you can learn about it. It's called the Key of Solomon. Because you see, before Christ, these priests, these Essenes, followers of John the Baptist, and followers of Pythagoras, because he got it from Solon, who was a priest of Egypt. There were several of these groups. The Therapeutai down in Egypt, the group up in Jerusalem was the Essenes, who became known as the Nazarenes and the Ebionites. But these groups practice magic, ceremonial magic, astral magic, various kinds of magic. And you had to be initiated into these things. And so the reason Buddha was sitting in this little position is because you make a circle and you sit in the position in this circle. And you fast for 40 days. You have to get purified with perfumes and you have to be washed and clean and have a white robe. And you're not allowed to eat for those 40 days. And you can't leave the circle. So what if you want to sleep? Well, you have to sleep sitting up in the position. Not forever, just for 40 days. Until you've gained mastery and you contact this genie and you conjure him up and you gain control over him. You say, what is your name? That's what Jesus said. What's your name? Oh, so we're Legion. So, oh, have you come to torment us before our time? What's Jesus conjuring up demons for? Dadgum blasphemer? Oh, because he was a magician. And then he told those demons, he said, all right, I'm going to be nice to you. I'll let you go into this herd of swine. And they went off over the cliff. It's very symbolic. Just like the fish in the book of Tobit that gets rid of spirits. It's a magical ceremony, a ritual for exorcism. Jesus did some of them. He put his fingers in this person's ears, spit in his eyes, and then he says, all right, now, can you see? That'll open your eyes. And another guy says, I want you to jump in the water and get under the water up and down 7 times. And then I want you to do this, and then I want you to do that. And he said a prayer, and he made a blessing, and boom, healed. Most of the time they would say a command in this particular language that the initiation was written in. Because these ancient ceremonies were written in a particular language. So, we're going to have to probably stop pretty close. We're going to just do a little bit more, and then we're going to stop this video, and we're going to do more. This is just the beginning, the first in the series of magic and true Christianity, and who Jesus really was, and who John the Baptist was, and who Daniel was. You know, remember Daniel? He's praying. Finally, he sees Gabriel comes to him. And it says he fell sick 21 days. Why does the Bible tell you that? It's like, well, it's just a fact, right? Why 21? See? Well, because that's part of this ceremony of conjuring up your genie to get control of him, to become a sorcerer, to be initiated into the order of magicians. Jesus did it, 40 days. Confronted all his demons. Satan tempted him. And finally, it says an angel came and served him. Jesus then had the power of the angels at his command. He bound things on earth, and it was bound in heaven. And he taught his disciples to do so. And Daniel was sick for 21 days because that's part of the ritual. After you fast for 40 days, and you have this last little spiritual battle like Jesus did with the devil, it wears you out. And these demons are powerful. And if you don't know, if you're not initiated properly, which is probably the biggest reason why most of this has been hidden, because if you're not initiated properly, you don't know how to do this, these demons can overtake you and attack you. So, well, I don't want nothing to do with that. Well, they did that in the Bible. Remember? That spirit that says, hey, I know Jesus and Paul I know, but I don't know who you are. Why should I obey you? And that's why you got to do it in the name of Jesus. Now, before Christ, they did it in the names of gods, like Adonai, and the name of El Elyon, Ea. There are these certain names that you would bind these demons in. You would conjure them up, bind them, and make them your servant. Because these are elemental spirits that you can, so that you can control this physical world. But you have to control the physical world, friends, in order to have spiritual power. Because what you bind on earth is also bound in heaven. There's a whole bunch of stuff here that we're going to have to learn. And we can't teach it all to you in one video. And we're not going to be able to get into the deepest parts of these just in a video. But what I'm attempting to do is explain to everybody that there is a whole bunch more. And we've got to leave behind all this confusion. Step out into the light and wake up. We've got to know the truth. So part of this ritual, after 40 days of fasting, you get sick. And then there was a 21-day period where you sat in the circle and you would do spells of protection upon yourself, so that you could bind these demons and they couldn't hurt you. Because you see, many of these evil spirits didn't like human beings, because they thought they should rule the world, and they thought human beings were just not fair, that they had a control over them, and they didn't like it. So they don't like human beings. But they have to obey us, and that's their place. We're given dominion over the earth, and we haven't taken that dominion. So Daniel partook of this particular ritual that is spoken of in the Keys of Solomon and these ancient magical texts that you can find. And many of them, as I said, are from the 1st century or before. And the things that they did was simply just the procedure that one carries out when doing these initiations into magic. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there, and we're going to pick it up again in the next video, and we're going to explain a whole bunch more about magic and how it's been taken away from us and what the true meaning of it is. And it's going to be great. See you again tomorrow, guys. Have a good one.